Hello everybody. In today's session, we will be touching upon potential appraisal. Performance appraisal, methods of performance appraisal are some things which you have already done. Okay, so now in this video, we will speak about the potential appraisal. Now this is slightly different and this is slightly more than performance appraisal. Performance appraisal happens after the performance of the individual has been observed or recorded or assessed. Okay, whereas when we speak about potential appraisal, we are trying to identify a situation, a condition wherein we try to assess what is the potential of the individual. In other words, what are all the capabilities of the individual. We tend to have this information with us, and the organization would like to use this information, and HR will definitely create a database about each individual's potentialities, and then that would be utilized by the organization in different forms, in different stages of the career of the individual also. So this is where we will try to. So in this video, we will try to see, what exactly do we mean by this potential of the individual, and how this has been assessed, how this can be assessed, or how can we recognize this? Can we train the potentials? Can we utilize them in the organizational function? Okay. So this is what we will try to do. In that context, okay, we will try to understand the concept of potential appraisal as investing in the right type of people, so that the ROI or the organization's return on investments will be very high. So there is something called as a Pareto's principle, which shows that 20% of the people actually bear the burden of the 80% of the people in the organization. And the top, these are the high performers, and they are the key performers, and whatever they do, actually impacts the entire organizational functioning, and the organizational growth or subsequent functioning, subsequent changes, etc. for the good are all dependent upon these people. Okay, so in keeping this in mind, okay, it's very essential that we identify people who are having high potentialities and who are high or key performers in the organization. Okay, so we have some information. Say some research has brought out that top 1% accounts for 10% of organization output, top 5% accounts for 25% of the organization output, top 20% accounts for 80% of the organizational output. So this is where we say that 20% of the people actually account for the entire 80% of the organizational function. Then what is this potential, so to say? So it indicates whether someone will be able to succeed in a bigger role in the future. Obviously, in a career planning or in a career structures, what actually happens over here that the individual will be moving from one level to another level, and actually having taking up more responsibilities, enhanced responsibilities, challenges, etc. Obviously, any career growth will involve these things. So when we try to assign a bigger responsibility, or when we try to assign a bigger position to the individual, the potential appraisal will actually help us, guide us, and also indicates whether this person will be able to fit into that job or not. So in other words, it's a person's ability to grow and to handle responsibilities of greater scale and scope. And greater scale in the sense, in terms of the vertical expansions, and increased responsibilities, scope in terms of increased responsibilities and multifarious tasks, etc., and complex challenges, etc. So whether the person is capable of handling all these things and can perform in a multitasking way, etc. This is what this will speak about. Then this potential appraisal is basically a holistic approach, which will give an indication about the individual's intellect, that is the intellectual capabilities, a little bit of personality, and also some insights into the character of the person. In that sense, we say that this is a holistic analysis about the individual. So 3 things which come out over here are in terms of the intellectual capabilities, skills of the individual, which usually we observe in the form of competencies, then the personality, specific personality characteristics or traits of the individual, and some insights into the character of the person, temperament of the person, etc. Right? And apart from that, it also assesses the potentialities of existing employees for higher positions and responsibilities. This I have already told you, that this is an indication. This actually gives an indication as to how people can be moved, when people can be moved, who can be moved in their career ladders. And it is also understood as a forward-looking process to see whether an employee will be suitable or flexible for new working conditions, and it assesses his present role and drafts different ways to improve his performance, and ultimately move to evaluate to see his suitability for higher responsibility. I think now it's very clear that we are trying to understand the person as to what he is comprised of, what he is capable of, not only now but also in the future for the organization. All this we are trying to do because we want to use him in future in different capacities in the organization. Okay? And the basic purpose of the potential appraisal is to inform employees about their possible career path or future prospects, etc. So the HR role comes over here in a major way. When a person exhibits certain, particularly say for example a leadership characteristics, okay, or is high on initiative in certain types, or is somebody who is capable of taking up some or managing crisis, or is good at problem solving, or is good at interpersonal relationships. These are some of the things which can be observed among the employees. So when HR observes these characteristics in the people, then they say that this indication, this particular characteristic trait exhibited by the employee will be useful, and will go into the assessment of the potential appraisal, so that it helps them in carving or in suggesting, guiding, directing or a particular career pathway for the employee. It also helps the company to chalk out succession programs. Yes. So whenever people resign, retire, or move away from jobs, let's separate from the jobs. So there is a vacancy which actually exists, and that vacancy actually may be filled when the company chalks out the these type of programs, and who fits into this position can be very well got from this type of appraisal. To regularly update the training efforts and enhance recruitment, and to develop their skills and competencies. Yes, definitely, every 2 to 3 years, definitely a training program has to be undergone by the employees, to not only to refresh but also to gain some knowledge in terms of upgraded skills, etc. So in that category, definitely, this training helps them. This potential appraisal helps them to train them in a definite direction, and it actually perfects the recruitment process and motivates them. Employees also feel satisfied that their skills and competencies are being used, in a very fruitful manner. So these are all the benefits we can say, and also the purposes as to why we use the potential appraisal. Then the steps in the potential appraisal, it's very, very clear. In the job analysis, you must have learned very clearly that there is something called as a job description, then the skills required from the individual, and the nature of the job, what are the demands from the job, and what are the skills required from the individual point of view. And the entire selection process is a matching between the two, okay, of these two. Then when this sort of a matching or this sort of a fixing of the characteristic or the skill or knowledge levels of the individual with the requirements of the job, that's the very effective way, we can say, or we can say the perfect way with which the selection process has taken place. Now, after that has taken place, okay, after that has taken place, the next thing which we try to look at is, given the amount of time, okay, and given the context in which the employee is actually functioning, then how do we make use of these technical or personal or behavioral capabilities of the individual, right? And these can be assessed with the help of these tests, which are usually used in the form of which can be rated with the help of by administering some tests like psychological tests or some simulation games or some performance appraisal records, etc. And we get an indication as to what is the level of presence of these capabilities, whether it is technical, whether it is managerial, whether it is behavioral capabilities of the employee, which are all happening or which are all present in the employee, and which the employees, how those skills can be utilized in the organization, okay, and how these can be organized and the feedback. So first, we try to match the skills of the individual with the nature of the job. That is over. Then, given the context, given the time limits, how can we utilize and maximize, optimize the skill levels of the employees, which are in the form of either technical, managerial, behavioral, conceptual, etc., etc. Now, these can be assessed with the help of some psychological tests or some simulation games, etc. And we get our performance appraisal records, and we try to enhance the position of the individual or change the position of the individual, so that the individual moves from one position to another position, feels satisfied that his capabilities, competencies are being used, organization benefits, individual is satisfied. Okay, so that's how it moves about, I should say. Right. Then, how do they actually go about it? I mean, if you see, the entire there is a sort of a vision at the at the management level or at the organizational level. So the conceptual effectiveness is usually assessed. Okay, and the criteria that is used, the type of a vision that both the organization has, the department has, the individual has. Okay, and the amount of business orientation that is being exhibited, the sense of reality, the entrepreneurial skills, like hardworking, persistence, go-getter, a high in achievement, motivation. Okay, these are the entrepreneurial skills, risk-taking, etc. Then the intrapreneurial, how resourceful the person is within as far as the individual, at the individual level, in the type of orientation. So the conceptual effectiveness of the individual can be assessed with these aspects. Then the operational effectiveness, in terms of work done. This is, in terms of the person, the characteristics, we can say, the conceptual effectiveness. Whereas in the operational effectiveness, we are talking with reference to, how much result-oriented the person is. How result-oriented, in the sense, problem-solving, go-getter, gets things done at the end of it, at the end of the day, not leaves things in the middle. Then the individual effectiveness, wherein the person actually does things in a perfect way by by coordinating all his skills and or people for that matter, and achieves and does 2-3 tasks, and at the same time optimizes time and energies, resources, so to say. That's where the effectiveness comes about. A high in initiative, risk taking and control. So when when the person is actually doing a job, approaching a job, doing a job, okay, these are the qualities, these are the aspects which are being observed, in terms of effectiveness, initiative, risk taking, and self control that happens over. Then how achievement motivation, how much of drive that the person has. Usually these people have to be self driven. So how self mastery, self driven, both has to be there, and self development, that goes with it, right? And how ambitious he is professionally, and innovativeness, and persistent or stability. These are again exhibited on the job by the individual, in terms of always aiming high, taking moderate risks, getting the information, getting knowledge or feedback about whatever they are trying to do, and upgrading, always learning, always interested in learning. That's where the professional ambitiousness gets exhibited. Then as far as interpersonal relations are concerned, network, how much of networking is there, negotiating power, and how much the person can influence others, in an assertive way without being dominant. The person needs to influence the others, and verbal or verbal ability of the individual, and how much of empathy the person can actually show to others. So that sort of an understanding is there, when the person is high in empathy. So the potential appraisal can focus on all of them or one of them, so to say. Whether it is conceptual part we are highlighting, we would like to highlight the operational part, we would like to highlight the personal part in terms of achievement motivation, or the interpersonal part, depending upon the nature of the job, depending upon the context in the organization. One or all of them or some of them can be used, so that we get some assessment of the individual. Effective management, it involves again 3 sets of activities. Okay, the establishment of clear strategic priorities, then careful selection of individuals, and management of talent itself, right? And it's very essential that these people need to be handled, if I can use the word, slightly differently. So we need to give them some we need to give them absolute clarity as far as the priorities, or whatever they want to, whatever the organization is looking for in terms of goals, plans, etc. The person is very clear as to where, how, what is the organizational steps, and how do we go about it, etc. And then the individual has to be placed in that context. These high potential individuals needs to be placed in that context, provided all the resources and other environment in the organization, and then they are developed, rewarded for their performance, and see to it that they are also retained in the organization. It's very difficult to retain these people, so we should also have some measures so that they are with the organization and continue to contribute to the organization. Then organizations take the help of assessment centers, several assessment centers in order to get these things done. It's not necessary that HR alone need to do. There are several places, several outsourced agencies where this work can be done. So how do these people focus, or what are those aspects in which they focus upon? Assessment centers will first focus upon the selection of the candidate. Okay, so like I told you, this potential is something which needs to be observed, which need to be captured at the time of selection of the candidate itself to the organization. So at that time itself, it is not that we have some indication of the number of skills that the individual has, but we will also make an assessment of the more number of skills or capabilities which the individual is capable of. So this selection process will highlight those aspects, so that we select a particular candidate, that particular candidate who stands head and shoulders above others in the group. So selection process is a key or is the first step which has to be done in a very crucial manner in the potential appraisal. Next is the performance management. Then here we are not speaking about performance appraisal. Okay, we are talking of the performance management. See, there's a small difference over here, right? Here, there is clarity in the direction, in the pathway that the individual will be going, employee will be going. That's one. Second, as the individual is moving in the career pathway or in the activity pathway, so to say, since this individual is high in personal effectiveness, the person will usually use lot of resources with minimum amount of time and energy and try to achieve the work. As the person is doing, then the person has to be rewarded for what he is doing, or some sort of a positive indication has to be given, or a feedback has to be given to the person that he is moving in the right direction, and the reward is also there at the end of it. Now, this is something which is usually indicated to the employee beforehand, so that you move in this direction, and when you achieve it with least number of errors, or a reference can also be with regard to time or errors, and when both of them are we are able to master, we are able to do more work in less time, or if it is error free, definitely there is a lot of performance management which is taking place. And this can happen only when there is clarity in goals, when the individual knows where he is going, when the individual has capability and is confident that he can use it and he can go and get the work done. Such type of people only should be placed over here. So the selection process is very important. Place the person in the job, and he will actually manage the job, provided we give or provide all the resources also over there. Then we assess the performance of the individual or groups, and here we actually not only do it for the present, but we also do it for the future use of the organization. So selection, performance management, and the assessment of the employee, that is done. Okay. Then apart from that, what else do we do? Okay, we also look at the competency of the individual. See, competency is the underlying characteristic which is causally related to effective or superior performance. In other words, I will also say that it is more in the form of an ability. When this ability actually starts interacting with the job, with the nature of with some task on the job, it is more exhibited in the form of competency. The perfectionist way, and the skilled way with which the person executes the job. Right? So ability, interaction with the job becomes it exhibits in the form of a competency or a superior performance on the job is what we actually observe. So what we actually observe is a superior performance of the person, in a perfect way of doing things in less amount of time and no errors at all. That we call it as a competent individual. But for the individual to function like a competent person, basically he has his abilities, and these abilities interact with the skills, and it comes out in the form of the competent. Right? Then actually assessment centers also do multiple exercises, simulation exercises, etc., so that the individual's more capabilities can also be learned over there. This diagram also explains a little in terms of performance management and the current behavior. If you see the selection assessments, right, which influence the future performance management also influences the future behavior, etc., and the output is over there in the form of the competence. That's also quite explanatory over here. What else these assessment centers do actually? It's applied in selection process. This I have already told you. Apart from that, There is an interpretation of the behavior generated in the exercises is also undertaken by trained assessors, which make their interpretations according to a competency model, right? So apart from talking in terms of the education qualifications or other types of skills, etc., some sort of an assessment is also done because some simulated conditions or gaming is also introduced. We get some insights into the behavior or basic characteristics of the person, and those type of interpretations, those type of understandings about the individual are also generated by this assessment centers, right? So we have an indication of not only the potentialities, we also have an indication about the other characteristics, behaviors which the individual exhibits, so to say. And at times what happens is they also try to give some specific, either a simulated job or a realistic job preview is also given to the individual, and the person is being observed, employee is being observed as to how he actually interacts or how he actually handles that situation, and the comments are being given by the rater, and we get again indication of the holistic view of the thing. Then who are these assessors, so to say, or who are these people? It's of course there's one option where we can always outsource the entire activity. Even if we outsource the activity, okay, we need those outside agency people to come and interact with people within the organization. That's also absolutely essential. So what is the level of people, or who are the people who actually join with the assessment center, so that they form a team, and this team assesses the employees. So they are drawn from the ranks of line managers, and facilitators may be a person from the personnel, that is a HR function, or an external management function. So it could be a consultant, if then the immediate boss and the HR person. Usually these three people come together and they form a team and they try to assess the person. Then the use of psychometric tests according to the need, according to the particular situation, they try to use the psychometric tests so that we get more information about the individual in that. And then several angles are being observed. If 2-3 people are there, it is not just one trait or one characteristic that is being observed, but when a team is there, each one will be observing for 2-3 characteristics, and assessment also goes on in that manner. Okay, that's what I said, where the key competencies will be observed and addressed throughout the day. And some of these competencies I just listed out in the form of decision making, logical reasoning, planning, organizing, professional image, interpersonal skills, customer focus, adaptability, goal orientation, teamwork, leadership, competency. All these are, you're familiar with what they all stand for. So in toto, I can say that we are talking with reference to skills, knowledge and abilities of the individual. Assessment is done on all these three aspects. Designing, which takes place in the assessment center. So they determine the competencies which are relevant to the role, to the job holders, and determine which tests and exercises which are required. So the first place is where we get some like our job analysis. What do we do in job analysis? Job description, job specifications, etc. So they from there for each job they try to identify what competencies, what skills are required, and how to assess them. So what tests to be used over there, and what competencies are we looking for in the individual. So for each job they try to create this sort of a folder where this assessment is being done. Then the competency designing, wherein from the job analysis a competency model is designed. So competencies will have behavioral indicators to demonstrate what constitutes good. It is more in terms of a grading which we try to give. The presence of the degree of presence of a competence. There is no absolute over here. It is just the degree of presence. So somebody might be highly competent, somebody might be low on a particular competence. So that's how the grading goes about. Then we also have a matrix which will speak about a few competencies which can be mapped out, which are high, which are low, which are medium, and relative mapping also can be done with other group members, etc. Right? And apart from that, we also have some manuals which also give us some indication where we can use it as a ready reckoner, and sometimes we can always interpret whatever scores etc. which we have got. Some tests also have this manuals and give some indication of the ranges, percentiles, etc. So we can also interpret it accordingly, right? And then the timetable, number of tests available, then the time taken for the conduct of tests, the number of candidates, when can we give the results, etc. and the conduct of it. So this is how the entire assessment center actually functions, with the help of starting from the job analysis. Okay, so usually we call this as the ORCE method. So if you see, observe, record, classify, evaluate, right? It's very clear. And all the competencies, first step is obviously what we observe, we record that, classify, and evaluate and present the result. Okay? And some of the types of assessment exercises could be in the form of analysis exercises. It could be written, numerical, or summarizing, etc. So you're familiar with these type of things. And then group discussions, given a topic, how does the person handle it, whether he is a team player, whether he gets included in the group, whether he dominates the group, whether he doesn't mingle with the group, all these things, active, passive, leadership role, okay, or is he critical, is he shy, does he take initiative? All these aspects are being observed in the group discussions, right? And topics are being given. You're quite familiar with this. And then role play is another usual method. A brief is being given about an incident, and there will be main characteristics will be just one or two of them. Maximum limit is 3. And in this, they try to give the situation, and it has to be enacted out, and the person will have to also talk in terms of what is the reaction after the situation, and they are assessed for various things, and usual topics could be in terms of workplace disputes, interpersonal relationships, and career development problems or issues, work-family conflicts, okay, etc. Right? And these are the things, or some sort of dilemmas which are being faced by the employees. These are some of the tricky things which are being given in the role play. Then we also have something called as in-trace. Okay, so in-tray, nowadays we have everything in the computer, but earlier, they used to have an tray on the right side, and they used to have a tray on the left side of the employee. So the right side is called as the in-tray. So in the in-tray, the number of files that keep pending, that keep coming on a particular day, and for each of them, the employee has to attend, give a solution or suggest something, a remark, and then put it in the out tray, right? And the competency of the individual in handling these critical things, and also the type of responses that are being given, whether it is an email, whether it is memos, whether it is reports, whatever it is, right? So basically we are looking at the assessments, or assessors are looking for abilities to identify problems for each document, to prioritize them, etc. right? And on a busy day, how are you able to handle, how are you able to manage without losing your cool, so to say. So your temperament, your characteristics as well as your integrity is being observed over here. Okay? This is just an example of an in-tray for this. Some of the skills which get recorded, like written communications, financial planning, operational control, negotiation services, staff coaching, networking, perseverance. These are the things that get into it, and this is the way the rating also goes into it. Okay. So the timetable is over here. whether how much time is required for preparation, for role playing, then interview stimulation. All this is being prepared by the assessment centers beforehand, and these are being again presented to the management about the individual. And the basic advantages are it provides a comprehensive overview of individuals' strengths, weaknesses, for the recruiters, for the employers, for the boss, for the management, for everybody. This sort of this information is like one ready tool. We know the entire sort of biodata, not just with reference to qualifications, but with reference to all other characteristics. They are basically standardized, so every individual will know where he or she stands, and it allows a recruiter to view multiple applicants at the same time, so the relative performance of the individual can also be assessed. Then the initial cost, time, money involved is there, but later on this can be compensated in a different way, and how the individual behaves in a group is also assessed. Okay. So in that sense, we can say that assessment centers actually do a wonderful job in the potential assessment of the individual, and they give a lot of information and insight about the individual to the not only to the individual but also to the immediate boss, to the management, etc. And it is for the management and the HR to use them in the right way, so that each individual's potentialities are utilized in a maximum way for the optimum performance of the organization. These are the references.